Welcome to Carolline Effect, where we uncover the truth behind relationships, psychology, and human behavior. Most people don't lose themselves in a relationship overnight. They lose themselves one warning sign at a time. The biggest red flags are rarely obvious. They're often disguised as chemistry, passion, or love. In today's video, we'll uncover 7 behaviors that can predict emotional chaos long before it happens. Watch until the end, because recognizing these patterns early could save you years of regret. You ever meet a woman who seems to have everything going for her? She's attractive, confident, funny, and naturally draws people in. But despite all that, something doesn't quite feel right. Your instincts keep telling you there's more beneath the surface, yet you ignore it because everything looks perfect. That mistake can cost you years of emotional investment, drain your confidence, and leave you questioning your own judgment. The reality is that people often reveal patterns from their past without realizing it. Their habits, reactions, and behavior can speak much louder than anything they say. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 signs that may suggest a woman has had a long history of casual relationships. The 4th sign is one of the strongest manipulation patterns I've seen over years of working with couples and individuals. I've watched many men overlook these warning signs until it was too late. They believed everything was fine, only to discover later that the relationship wasn't what they thought it was. My goal is to help you recognize these patterns early so you can make better decisions and build relationships based on trust and genuine compatibility. If you've ever had a relationship where something felt off but you couldn't explain why, leave your experience in the comments. Your story could help someone else avoid making the same mistake. Let's start with the first sign, because it's one that many men mistakenly see as a positive. Imagine meeting someone who becomes physically comfortable almost immediately. Within a few conversations, or sometimes even on the first date, she speaks openly about intimacy, flirts without hesitation, and creates an intense sense of chemistry. Many men interpret this as confidence, or believe she's especially attracted to them. But sometimes that's not confidence at all. It can be a sign that intimacy has lost much of its emotional significance. A woman who places real value on emotional connection usually allows closeness to develop naturally. Physical intimacy becomes meaningful because it's built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. There's a gradual process where both people invest emotionally before becoming deeply connected. When that process is missing, it's worth paying attention. If emotional and physical boundaries disappear almost instantly, it may indicate that intimacy has become routine rather than something personally meaningful. Watch how she responds when conversations become more personal. Does she show genuine vulnerability or moments of hesitation that suggest she's emotionally invested? Or does everything feel effortless, almost rehearsed, as though she's followed the same pattern many times before? It's easy to mistake this familiarity for an extraordinary connection. You may convince yourself that the chemistry is unique, when in reality you could simply be stepping into a role that's been repeated over and over. The flirting, the compliments, the timing, they may feel special to you, but to her they could simply be familiar habits. The difficult part is that when intimacy loses its emotional importance, creating a truly unique bond becomes much harder. Without emotional exclusivity, physical closeness alone rarely builds the lasting connection many people hope for. That's why it's important not to confuse immediate comfort with genuine emotional interest. Someone crossing personal boundaries quickly doesn't necessarily mean they've chosen you in a meaningful way. Sometimes it simply means those boundaries have become less significant over time. The second sign is much harder to recognize because it often hides behind a warm personality. She laughs with you, enjoys conversations, tells entertaining stories, and even shares moments from her life that seem personal. On the surface, everything feels open. Yet despite spending more time together, you never feel like you've truly reached the real person underneath. It's like being welcomed into a beautiful home where every important room stays locked. You're allowed to see enough to feel comfortable, but never enough to understand who she truly is. This isn't the same as having healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries develop naturally while trust is growing. An emotional wall is different. It's a protective shield built over years of disappointment, heartbreak, or repeated emotional experiences that taught someone to keep others at a distance. You'll notice it when conversations begin moving toward deeper subjects. Ask about defining moments in her life, her greatest fears, or experiences that shaped her, and she'll often redirect the discussion. She may laugh it off, give a vague answer, or smoothly change the topic before revealing anything meaningful. The challenge is that many sincere men naturally respond by opening up themselves. They'll share their own struggles, dreams, insecurities, and past experiences, hoping that honesty will encourage the same level of openness. Instead, she listens, responds kindly, and seems supportive, but rarely offers the same emotional depth in return. She acknowledges your vulnerability without matching it. Over time, the relationship begins to feel one-sided because you're continually investing emotionally while receiving very little genuine openness in return. You keep giving more of yourself, believing the relationship is growing, but in reality, it may have reached its emotional limit from the very beginning. Then, when disagreements naturally happen, that emotional distance becomes impossible to break through. Instead of talking things out, she may withdraw, stop communicating, or suddenly decide the relationship no longer feels right. It's often not because she doesn't know what she wants, but because staying emotionally guarded feels safer than becoming truly vulnerable. Pay close attention if months go by and every conversation stays on the surface. Even if the physical connection becomes stronger, you still feel like something important is missing. That feeling isn't always your imagination. Sometimes it's a sign that an emotional barrier is still standing. Trying to build a future with someone who never fully lets you in can quietly wear you down, until one day you realize you felt lonely the entire relationship. Another pattern to notice is when nearly every important person in her social life is a man. Everyone has friends of the opposite sex, and that's completely normal. But if her phone is constantly buzzing with messages from different men, if she has a different male friend connected to every story she tells, and if these friendships seem endless, it's worth paying attention instead of dismissing it automatically. For some people, keeping a large circle of male attention becomes a source of constant validation. It's less about friendship and more about always feeling admired, desired, or important. That steady stream of attention can become something they're unwilling to give up, even while in a committed relationship. Look at the patterns rather than individual situations. Maybe she's still close with several ex-partners. Maybe she has male friends who have openly admitted they would date her if given the opportunity. When you ask about them, the response is often something like, "Don't worry, he's just a friend," or "We've always been close." But actions matter more than explanations. Friends who regularly send late-night messages, call at unusual hours, or constantly seek private attention may not be as harmless as they're described. You may also notice that her close female friendships are limited or don't seem to last. Building strong friendships often requires openness, accountability, and emotional investment. Constantly relying on attention from men can sometimes replace the effort needed to build those deeper connections. There's also another possibility that many people overlook. Sometimes those male friends quietly become backup options. If the relationship struggles or ends, she doesn't have to meet someone new because there are already people waiting in the background. Whether intentional or not, that can make it difficult for a partner to ever feel completely secure. The reality is that someone who constantly depends on attention from multiple people may never be fully emotionally present in one relationship. Even if they insist nothing inappropriate is happening, you may always feel like you're competing for a place that should already belong to you. Another behavior that's much harder to recognize is when affection becomes something that's exchanged instead of freely given. At first, it doesn't seem obvious. You believe your moments of closeness are genuine, but over time you begin noticing a pattern. Maybe the two of you have an argument. Perhaps you disagree with her, refuse a request, or question something that happened. Suddenly, her entire attitude changes. She becomes unusually affectionate, more physically close, and everything feels perfect again. The disagreement seems to disappear overnight. Except it hasn't actually been resolved. It was simply covered up instead of worked through. The opposite can happen too. Whenever she's unhappy or wants you to change your behavior, affection suddenly disappears. Physical closeness becomes distant, warmth fades, and the emotional atmosphere changes. Whether intentional or not, intimacy starts functioning like a reward when things go her way and a consequence when they don't. Over time, this creates an unhealthy dynamic where emotional and physical connection begin feeling conditional. Instead of being expressions of love, they become tools that influence decisions, apologies, or behavior. One of the biggest clues is the timing. Ask yourself whether affection appears naturally throughout the relationship, or mostly after you've done something she wanted. Does it disappear the moment conflict begins? If those patterns repeat consistently, they're probably telling you something important. When closeness starts feeling transactional instead of mutual, the relationship can slowly become an exchange rather than a partnership. One person begins controlling access to connection, while the other constantly works to earn it. The next sign is more subtle. There's a big difference between someone who naturally understands people and someone who has become exceptionally skilled at reading and influencing them. One comes from empathy and emotional awareness. The other often comes from experience, observation, and learning exactly how to get the reactions they want from different personalities. The second sign is intentional manipulation. She's been through enough relationships with different kinds of men that she's learned exactly how many of them think, react, and what triggers their emotions. Over time, she's figured out which emotional buttons create the strongest response and how to use them to her advantage. In the beginning, it feels incredible. She says the things you've always wanted someone to notice. She admires your confidence, your ambition, your leadership, or the qualities that matter most to your identity. It creates the feeling that someone finally understands you on a deeper level. But real understanding takes time. When someone seems to know exactly who you are almost immediately, it's worth asking whether they truly know you, or whether they've simply become very skilled at reading people. Once she understands both your strengths and your weak points, she knows how to influence your emotions. When she wants you closer, she builds up your confidence with praise and admiration. When she wants control, she creates doubt by targeting your insecurities. One day you feel like you can do no wrong, and the next you're desperately looking for her approval again. The problem is that this kind of control rarely looks obvious. She doesn't have to make dramatic demands or start constant arguments. Instead, she quietly shapes how you feel. She knows when to be affectionate, when to disappear, when to compliment you, and when silence will have the greatest effect. Every move keeps you emotionally invested while making you uncertain about where you stand. Many men mistake this emotional roller coaster for intense love. The highs are exciting, and the lows make them chase even harder. Eventually, they become attached to the cycle itself instead of the relationship. That's not genuine love, it's emotional conditioning. If you ever feel like your emotions are constantly being influenced by someone else's behavior, pay attention. Once you recognize the pattern, it's impossible to ignore it. Then the choice becomes yours. Continue seeking her validation, or step away and take back your emotional independence. The sixth sign is having no sense of privacy or discretion about her past. This isn't about judging someone's history or expecting perfection. It's about recognizing the value of keeping deeply personal experiences personal. Healthy relationships usually involve a certain level of respect for emotional intimacy. A woman who treats every intimate experience like casual conversation may openly discuss former partners, reveal explicit details about past relationships, or proudly present her dating history as though it's part of her resume. She speaks about deeply personal moments without hesitation because, over time, they've stopped feeling personal to her. When experiences become routine, they often lose their emotional significance. What was once private can start feeling ordinary. Notice how she responds if you respectfully ask about her past. If she immediately becomes defensive, turns the conversation back on you, or labels you as insecure or outdated, she may be avoiding an honest discussion about how previous experiences can influence present relationships. Instead of addressing your concern, she focuses on winning the argument. This attitude can also affect your relationship together. Someone who freely shares private details about former partners may eventually have little hesitation sharing private details about you as well. When the line between public and private becomes blurred, trust becomes much harder to maintain. Pay attention to the way she talks about her history. Does she treat meaningful experiences with respect, or do they sound like just another story? Does she value the relationship you're building, or does it seem like you're simply another chapter among many? If she doesn't recognize why discretion matters, she may struggle to understand why protecting your relationship matters too. The seventh sign is a consistent history of short-lived relationships. At first, this may not seem important. Plenty of relationships end, and that's part of life. But when every relationship follows the exact same pattern, it's worth paying attention. Everything starts with intense attraction, fast emotional attachment, and excitement. Then, just a few months later, everything falls apart. She'll often explain the breakups by blaming bad timing, incompatible partners, or unfortunate circumstances, while rarely acknowledging her own role in the outcome. The reason this matters is simple. Long-term relationships aren't built during the exciting beginning. They're built after the excitement settles, when disagreements happen, routines develop, and both people have to work through challenges together. If she's never remained in a relationship long enough to experience that stage, she may never have developed the skills required to sustain a lasting partnership. Sometimes this pattern also reveals an addiction to the excitement of something new. The attention, constant messages, emotional intensity, and feeling of being desired create a rush. But once that excitement fades, she begins searching for another beginning instead of building something deeper. Healthy relationships eventually become stable, and stability rarely provides the same emotional thrill as constant novelty. That's why some people continue chasing new experiences instead of investing in lasting commitment. Take time to understand someone's dating history instead of accepting surface-level explanations. Ask thoughtful questions and look for recurring patterns. If every relationship has ended before reaching 6 months, it may indicate more than simple bad luck. It could suggest that she has little experience navigating the difficult stages that make love endure. When you look at all 7 signs together, they create a much bigger picture. This isn't about condemning someone for their past. It's about recognizing repeated behaviors that often shape future relationships. A lack of healthy emotional boundaries, emotional unavailability, constant dependence on outside attention, using intimacy as leverage, calculated emotional control, little regard for privacy, and a pattern of short-term relationships and not isolated issues. Together, they reveal habits that can influence every future relationship. Many men ignore these warning signs because attraction clouds their judgment, or because they convince themselves they'll somehow be different. They believe love alone will change deeply rooted patterns. In reality, lasting change only happens when someone chooses to confront those patterns themselves, and that doesn't happen often. Once you recognize these behaviors, you can make a more informed decision about the future you want. Your standards exist for a reason. Protect them, because the quality of your future relationships depends on the choices you make today. If this message gave you something to think about, share your perspective in the comments. Someone else may be experiencing these same patterns without recognizing them yet. And if you want more conversations that help you develop stronger judgment and healthier relationship standards, subscribe to so you never miss what's next. This isn't about judging anyone. It's about recognizing patterns before they become your reality. The right relationship should bring trust, peace, and mutual respect, not confusion or constant emotional struggle. If you found these insights valuable, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Carolline Effect for more videos that help you make smarter relationship decisions.